Hello and welcome to Story Time with Professor JW. This story, I think you'll really like. Just check it out and let me know. If you do like it, hit that subscribe button and the like button. I'd really appreciate it. So anyway, let's get on with this story. I think you're going to like it. This happened last year. I was 22 at the time. I was completely burnt out from work, and I was going through one of those stretches where everything in life felt like it was happening to someone else. I won't get into specifics, but let's just say I had a colorful past. And by that point, I was actively trying to put some distance between myself and certain chapters of my life. What I needed more than anything was to disappear for a few days. We've all been there, right? All been there. I must have been venting out loud because one day at work, I found myself having a conversation with a coworker about this tiny island off the coast of Maine. The way he described it, the place sounded almost aggressively boring. No nightlife, barely any tourists after dark, and most of the people just took the ferry out for the day and left before sunset. He said if you stayed overnight, it was like having the whole island to yourself, which was exactly what I was looking for. I found a vacation rental listing for a standalone cottage. Standalone cottage in the middle of this island. No one around. That's awesome. And it was right on the shoreline. Got a whole island to myself and got a standalone cottage right on the shoreline. The price was suspiciously cheap. It was. And it was available on short notice, which probably should have raised some flags, but I wasn't exactly in a cautious headspace. I booked it I didn't think twice. I booked it without even thinking twice. The cottage itself was small. Just a single room with a bed, an unused kitchenette, and a bathroom the size of a closet. It was set back from the water, surrounded on three sides by thick brush, then that pressed right up against the walls. The brush pressed right up against the walls. The front faced the ocean with a single window covered by this thin, semi translucent curtain that didn't do much to block the view in either direction. What the hell? The walls were paper thin. I could hear wind moving through the brush like it was right next to my ear. The door had a deadbolt and a chain lock that both looked like they'd been installed recently. When it struck me as a little odd for such an isolated spot. But I didn't dwell on it. I took the late afternoon ferry over and spent the early evening. I spent the early evening just walking around the island. It was kind of surreal watching the place empty out as the day visitors filtered back to the mainland. That was nice. By the time the sun went down, there was almost no one left. No street lights. No ambient noise. Nothing. Nothing. Not a damn thing. I was pretty much left alone to enjoy the sounds of the ocean by myself. It was beautiful. I grabbed dinner at this little pub near the ferry landing. The bartender was friendly enough, but noticed that she gave me a weird face when I told her where I was staying. On the walk back, I passed a small dock tucked into a cave maybe 100 yards from the cottage. There was a single blue motorboat moored over there. It stood out because all the other boats I had seen on the island were larger lobster vessels. I made a mental note of it, but didn't think too much beyond that. I got back to the cottage around 10:30. Locked the deadbolt and the chain and settled in for the night. Up until one point, I was really enjoying the time away from everything. But of course, that peace didn't last. I realized my phone charger was busted. Or maybe it was the outlet I was using. But the point is, my phone wouldn't charge no matter what I tried. I tried every outlet in the cottage. My phone was on low battery, and I was 100% sure it was going to die within the hour. Yep. Luckily, I didn't really need it to get back to the ferry. I had a physical ticket, but no one likes to be without a phone. I decided just to call it a night and go to sleep. I was exhausted anyway, and I did fall asleep pretty quickly, actually. The exhaustion from the past few nights hit me all at once, and I was out within a few minutes of my head hitting the pillow. I woke up randomly in the middle of the night. I don't know what pulled me out of my sleep exactly. But once I was awake, I heard it. Footsteps. Footsteps on the gravel outside the cottage. They were close, right in front of the door, and whoever was out there was taking their time, which I could tell because there was a long pause in between each step. It definitely didn't sound like an animal scurrying around. I shifted in bed just slightly, and the footsteps stopped immediately. The silence that followed was uncomfortable in a way that I couldn't really describe. It stretched on long enough that I started to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing, or that it really had just been an animal. I don't know. I didn't want to move, so I just stared at the ceiling in the same position. I'm not sure what I was waiting for, but I was so freaked out that I couldn't even think straight. And a few minutes later, the footsteps came back. This time, there's no mistaking the direction. They weren't passing by, they were approaching. I heard them come right up to the entrance of the cottage and stop directly in front of the door. At that point, my heart was damn near pounding out of my chest. I felt like they could hear it, but there was nothing I could do besides try and be as silent as possible. As if the situation wasn't bad enough, whoever was out there turned on a flashlight and tried shining it through the front door. I couldn't move because I was petrified in fear. That person clicked off the light and tried the door handle. I shut my eyes and prayed the deadbolt would hold. And it did. I thought that would be enough of a deterrent. But I was wrong. A few seconds passed, and then they tried again, putting more weight into it this time. Then came several hard bangs, one after another. The sound was so loud in that tiny little cottage that I actually flinched with every impact. The bangs activated my brain, though the threat was more real And even though I was still terrified, I knew I had to do something. So, without thinking, I jumped out of bed while that person was still banging on the door and crouched down behind it. I was fully prepared for what was about to happen, but instead of that person bursting through the door, everything went quiet. I stayed crouched down for a few seconds, trying not to breathe too loudly. And then I still remember this vividly. Whoever was on the other side of the door spoke. "I know you're in there, Leo. You hear me? Leo. Leo, I know you're in there. I know you're in there, Leo." I almost yelled out in shock, but I stopped. I stopped myself. It was a man's voice, one I didn't recognize, but he somehow knew my name. He knew I was there. The footstep moved away from the door and alongside of the cottage. I tracked the sound as it passed the bathroom wall and continued around. He was taunting me. He knew I was in there. My confidence was gone. Hearing my own name was enough to make me dizzy. It was the scariest moment in my entire life. Over the next stretch of time, I have no idea how long, maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, whoever was outside circled that cottage. I had no idea what they were doing, and a part of me was screaming for them to just break down the damn door and get it over with already. Eventually, the footsteps receded from the cottage. Then from the direction of the dock, I heard an engine start. It was the unmistakable sound of a small outboard motor. I listened as it pulled away from the shore and faded into the distance across the open water. I didn't sleep after that. That's not an exaggeration. I stayed awake the entire night. The second it was bright enough to see, I was out the door. The gravel around the cottage told the whole story. There were heavy boot prints circling the cottage multiple times. The prints led in a straight line from the cottage toward the dock and ended right at the waterline. The next day was honestly a blur. I returned the key to the property owner, boarded a ferry, and made it back safely. But I was not in a good headspace. Here's the thing that still gets me. Whoever was outside that cottage didn't come to the island. Didn't come from the island, excuse me. Whoever's out there didn't come from the island. They came by boat specifically to that cottage. And on that specific night, they came there specifically that night and to that cottage. That day, they knew my name. They knew my damn name and exactly where I'd be. The thing is, I absolutely no idea how they could have tracked me down. I confronted my coworker about it a few days later, the one who told me about the island in the first place, and he swore up and down he hadn't told anyone about my trip, and honestly, I believed him. He looked genuinely freaked out when I told him what happened. I mentioned earlier that I have a colorful past. Well, I'm not going to get into the details, but let's just say I'm not exactly shocked that someone out there might want to find me. Well, what I still can't wrap my head around is how does someone track me to some random island off the coast of Maine? How did they know what rental I booked and on what night? How long have they been watching me before any of this? I don't have any answers to any of those questions. And the worst part is, I still work the same job and live in the same place. Nothing has changed since then, but I have no reason to believe things are over. If you like my story, I appreciate if you hit that subscribe button and like button. And y'all have a good day. Thanks a lot.